The Zahara Double Raspberry Ripple. So many of you are trying this zinnia for the first time this year, and you've been asking when I start mine. I'm starting them right now, and no matter where you live, you can too. After 4 years of growing these, I've learned exactly what works. Today, I'll show you where to get the seeds, how I grow them, and how to get even more blooms from your plants, plus a few extra tips along the way. Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to my channel. I have been growing this beautiful zinnia for the last 4 years. I grew it for the first time on a whim, and I loved it so much that it's earned a permanent space in my garden. And during those 4 years, I've learned a few things. So I'm going to share with you some successes, some fails, and how you can be successful in growing these as well. And a common question that I get is where to get the seeds. And I have never seen these seeds sold at a garden center or nursery. I typically do have to order them online. So you can just Google it and order it from any place that comes up. I personally have ordered them from Swallowtail Seeds, Park Seeds, and this year I ordered them from Pine Tree Garden Seeds. But even if you don't have these on hand right now, you can order them and start them in a week or two when your seeds come in, and you'll still get a jump start on the season. I'm in a gardening zone 6B, 7A. So if you're anywhere in the continental US or even our friends in Canada, you are good to start these seeds now. Now, it generally takes anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks to get blooms on zinnias, which is why we're starting these now and indoors. By doing that, we are going to get blooms by the middle to end of May. How are we going to grow these? Now, this is where one of my fails comes in. I had tried growing these direct sowing them outside in the garden just by scratching the soil, putting them in once the temperatures warmed up, and I had very low germination. Then I also tried the winter sowing method. Again, really low germination. So what I decided was that I would have more control if I grew them indoors in a controlled environment under grow lights. And that is how I have found to have the best germination and success with these zinnias. Now, regardless of where I have ordered these seeds from, I find that the germination rate on this variety of seed is generally lower than any other type of zinnia that I have grown, but it is worth it for how pretty they are. So the first thing you need to do is get some seed starting soil, not potting soil, because anytime that you start seeds, you need a very light soil so that those seeds will easily germinate. So I have put some of my seed starting soil in this bucket. I've also pre-moistened it, and it's kind of like making mud pies. You just want to get that soil nice and moist so that you can fill your seed starting trays with it. I have these seed starting trays that have 8 cells in each one, and my seed packet comes with 20 seeds. So I am going to, so in total, I have 16 cells and I have 20 seeds. So I'm going to double up 2 seeds in some of these cells. And that way I have these 2 trays that I'm going to manage to see how my germination goes, etc. Because at some point you are going to have to pot them up to another container with potting soil. So starting them like this is fine. So I have my soil. I'm going to go ahead and start filling my trays. And you want to pack them in there nice and tight. You don't want to leave any air bubbles, or air pockets, I should say. All right, I'm going to rinse my hands, and we are going to sow our zinnia seeds. All right, very important step before you even sow any seeds into that soil is to make some labels. And so I just have some plant tags here, and I'm going to go ahead and use one of these garden markers to label what I have growing in these trays. Now, zinnia seeds want to be sown a 1/4 inch deep, and you want to cover them back up with soil. Now, 1/4 inch is not deep at all. And so what I did was I usually use a chopstick to sow my seeds, to push seeds into the soil. And I just took a tape measure or a ruler, and that is a 1/4 inch deep. So I can just go into my tray and press it down to where that line is. And I know that that's how deep I'm going to sow my zinnia. So I'm just going to make a little divot in each one, so that I can just drop my seeds. Now here they look, this is what they look like. And I'm going to take one, and I'm going to place it right in the center, just like that. And then I'm going to cover it back over and tamp down the soil. That's it. I like to make my holes first because as I'm going through, I know that if the hole is still open, I have not placed a seed in there yet. Now that I've sown my seeds, I'm going to bring them over to under the grow lights, and we're going to discuss heat requirements, light requirements, when we're going to pot these up, when they need to be pinched, and when to plant them out. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Over the weekend, I made some delicious lemon blueberry donuts. Sounds complicated, right? They went from frozen to yummy in 8 minutes. I ordered them from Wild Grain, who is the sponsor of today's video. Wild Grain is a bake from frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, pastries, and fresh pastas made by small artisanal bakers across the country. Everything bakes straight from frozen in 25 minutes or less, so you can have fresh bread on the table without planning ahead or baking from scratch. I get the classic variety box, so it's a mix of breads, pastries, and pastas. They also have vegan, gluten-free, and protein options. What's fun is that their offerings are always changing with new seasonal items, so each box feels a little bit different. This time we got lemon blueberry donuts and ham and cheese foldovers. The donuts had the texture of an old-fashioned donut with a light sprinkle of sugar and the most delicious blueberry lemon flavor. I was honestly blown away by the taste, quality, and how quickly they baked in my oven. The ham and cheese foldovers were like grown-up versions of pigs in a blanket. My boys devoured them as an after-school snack, and since the ingredients are simple and clean, I feel good about feeding them to my family. And you already know I love their croissants. They're buttery, flaky, and honestly some of the best I've had. If you want to try Wild Grain, use the link below and use the code Hooked and Rooted for $30 off your first box and free croissants for life. And thank you so much to Wild Grain for sponsoring today's video. I'm going to go ahead and place my 2 trays of zinnias right here under my grow lights, and I already have a heat mat underneath to provide some bottom warmth, which will definitely help with the germination. And I'm also going to place some humidity domes. The humidity domes are going to help keep that soil nice and moist, which will also help with the germination. And you're going to see that it's going to start building condensation, similar to what you see here. Now, I really like to use this setup of having grow lights and the heat mats because I feel like it gives me a lot of control over the seeds. And this way I can ensure that I get as many plants as I need to cover both sides of my driveway walls. I typically like to have between 15 and 16 plants. Now, I keep my grow lights on for a total of 16 hours on and 8 hours off. And I have found that that works really well for me. Up here is a little bit warmer than my basement, which is where I've grown them in the past under grow lights. And what that will do is, because it's a little bit warmer up here, they'll likely germinate a little bit faster. So if you have them in a colder area, it'll just slow down the germination a tiny bit. Zinnias take anywhere from 5 to 10 days to germinate. So just keep an eye on them, make sure that the moisture is right, and in about a week or so, you should see some germination. When the germination starts, you want to take off your humidity dome, and at that point, you're just monitoring so that you can water them when needed. Now, once your zinnias germinate, they're pretty fast growers, which means that in 3 to 4 weeks, it'll be time to pot them up into a larger container. And you can do that by putting them into a 4-inch planter like you see here. And most of us have a lot of these hanging around from when we plant out annuals in the summertime. But even if you don't, you can use something like a plastic cup. You just want to make sure that you have drainage holes. And you also want to use potting soil, because potting soil has more nutrients so that your seedling can continue to grow really great roots as well as top foliar growth. Once it puts on some good size, you want to go about maybe 2 or 3 sets of leaves up and pinch that central growth leader, because what that's going to do is it's going to encourage more side branching in a bushier plant, which means more blooms. For most of us, it's going to be time to plant out our zinnia plants at some point between Mother's Day and Memorial Day. But because we've been growing them in a very controlled environment indoors with warmth and under grow lights, it's important to harden them off, which is the process of acclimating your seedlings to outdoor temperatures, wind, and sunlight. So for about a week, you will gradually increase the amount of time that your plants spend outdoors, increasing it by a couple of hours each day until they've been out there all day. Then it is time to plant them out. Zinnias are one of the easiest annuals you can grow, and this variety in particular, the Zahara Double Raspberry Ripple, is just beautiful. It goes through such a large variation of color changes. You'll notice that it will start off a really beautiful bright pink, and then it will start getting a striping effect of pink and white before fading to either a very light pink or kind of a creamy white. And you'll get all of these colors on the same plant depending at what stage the blooms are in. So planted in mass, they're really impactful. They look really beautiful planted in groups along the front of a border. They also look really great as container plants because they're short and bushy. These zinnias, the Zahara double raspberry ripple, are such low fuss plants. They thrive in the front of my driveway, which is hot asphalt all summer long. I do not have drip irrigation over there, and I never water them. They basically just get watered by the rain. They are drought tolerant. They take a lot of heat. The deer and rabbits stay away from it. They don't seem to touch it, which is amazing. So they're pretty pest resistant, at least in my garden as well. So if you've never grown an annual plant before, try zinnias, and specifically try this variety because it's a really good one. Now you might be wondering, Steph, if you've been growing these for 4 years, why are you still buying seeds and not collecting your own? Well, I actually did collect my own. I collected some last year and I also collected some this year. The thing with collecting your own zinnia seeds is that zinnias that are open pollinated don't always grow true to the original variety. So if you plant several varieties of zinnias in your garden and the bumblebees are going from plant to plant to plant, you're going to get some cross-pollination. And while you can still get some really beautiful varieties of zinnias, you might not necessarily get that variety that you collected that seed from. So for that reason, I continue to buy the pack of seeds each year just to make sure I get the same zinnias every year. However, I am planting them pretty isolated from all my other plants because they're at the top of my driveway in front of my walls. So last year when I collected them, I shared the seeds with some of my friends from my garden club. And my friend Darlene actually showed me some photos of what they looked like growing alongside some of the atomic purple gomphrena that I also shared with her. And they looked pretty close to the original variety, which means that it's quite possible that they will grow true from collected seed, which is really exciting. So this year, I'm actually going to do the same experiment, and I'm also going to grow a tray of my own collected seed. And I'm going to compare them to the ones that I'm growing from the seed packet that I bought this year. I actually looked this up. I went to Google and I tried to find some information about whether or not this particular seed variety or this zinnia would come true from collected seed. And I did find a Facebook post in a zinnia group that someone had asked this very same question. And this is what the post on Facebook read. I planted double Zahara raspberry ripple for the first time this year. I'm in love with a variation of colors. Can you harvest seeds from this variety to store? I definitely want some for next year. And this is a reply that she had gotten on that post. This variety is open pollinated Zinnia marylandica, and because it's not a hybrid, the seeds will come true next year. However, this will only be true if you have no other varieties of the same species growing close by. But if your plants are isolated from other zinnias, they will come true next year. So we're going to give it a go, and I'll be sure to report back with what happens. I hope that these steps were helpful in getting you started with growing your Zahara double raspberry ripple zinnias. And if you think that this is a gorgeous flower, go ahead and hit that like button. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.